Those of you that don't know me, I'm Howard and from the BA, and it's my great privilege this afternoon to introduce Angela. I'm really excited about this because I know so little about this, and yet I know that it's one of the most dynamic and exciting parts of bookselling, so we're really sort of thrilled to have you here. What Angela has said is we want to make this as interactive as possible, so yeah, as questions, comments, thoughts occur to you through it, just put your hand up and we'll try to facilitate.
Or just interrupt me. I don't mind.
Yeah, so that's super. So over to you.
Yeah,
Thanks so
that's
much.
fine. Thanks very much for coming. So this is the last skills lab of the afternoon. Then you can breathe a sigh of relief. There's been so much packed in, hasn't there, in the last 2 days. So thanks very much for coming. We've got a skills lab entitled Graphic Novels and Manga. It is a dynamic genre, most definitely, or multiple genres. My objective really this afternoon is talk about the choice of stock available to you, how you position it in your bookshops, and also how you engage with customers. And in fact, I've already had a couple of conversations this afternoon from parents and bookshops saying, I'm keen to do this, but I'm not sure how to engage my customer base or attract a new audience to my bookshop to do that. I've had strict instructions not to go past that pillar, so I'll carry on. You might wonder why it's me here and not some geeky young lad that's standing here covering graphic novels and manga. I do in fact hold my sons entirely responsible for the simple reason that when they were very young, they discovered a stash of comics and books in the loft that belonged to my husband, or rather their father. These were at least 30 years old, these books, maybe more than that. All wholly inappropriate, as I discover later. However, they got bitten by that bug, and it's through their friends and themselves and their interests in a whole range of different hobbies and interests and conversations over the years that has kind of meant that I've absorbed quite a lot of information around it. As you said, please interrupt me, please share your experiences throughout the afternoon, and if you need to contact the bookshop afterwards, please do say. We have had a new branding recently, and so I'm going to hopefully explain why we still keep comics as part of the title of the bookshop, even though it's been a bookshop in our family for 12 years. And obviously it's evolved over that time with a completely different focus. You might have seen an awful lot of graphic novels in the Gardener's Trade Fair yesterday. However, you might not have even realised they were graphic novels. So that's going to be an interesting discussion, I think. So I thought a show of hands would be good to start with. Who in your bookshops currently is actively stocking and selling manga and graphic novels? Wow, you probably know more than I do then in that case.
Mine are all second hand.
Oh, second hand, okay. Anybody else stock new ones?
Just graphic novels.
That's pretty impressive. Yeah, great. Anybody here thought about stocking and selling graphic novels and manga but not really made that extra step? Okay, a few of you. Anybody completely new to graphic novels and manga who perhaps just wants a little bit of a broad brush background detail about it? Few hands up. Yeah, lovely, thank you. That's great, thank you. This is our bookshop. It's based in a small but increasing market town. The 3 reasons for having this bookshop was, as I say, it's 12 years old now. The main reason was to provide an employment opportunity, a stable employment opportunity to 2 young men with autism, who are my sons. They have Asperger's. They had learning support at school. As I say, they've been massive comic fans. I think the perception that it's specifically a genre that appeals to is completely wrong. And so one of the main priorities that we had from the shop was let's have a big open clear window at the front, no posters, no nothing concealing the shop itself. So the priority was let's make it light, let's make it airy, let's make it with lots of niche spaces where people can sit and curl up with a book, give them the chance to have some confidence and develop some awareness of other books that they probably wouldn't necessarily look at in Waterstones. And so that was a priority, really. We also realised 12 years ago that it was important to provide that type of book, graphic novels, manga, comics, to everybody. We had a lot of interest when the shop first opens from females of all ages, and typically in the past comic shops themselves have not really warmed to that demographic. We thought it was really, really important that we should focus on that. So they were two of the reasons for doing it. The other was to create a hub that provided merchandise, products and conversation to people who did not get what they wanted from not from Waterstones, Wilkinson's or Sainsbury's, because typically small market towns tend to be fairly generic in terms of the shops that they provide. We wanted to create a hub that was going to evolve and change, and that's given us the independent bookshop label to do that. I talked about us being niche comics before, and we had a superhero as part of our branding 12 years ago. We made a very conscious decision to still include comics in that bookshop title. The reason why we made that decision was because people, and that's a big general comment from me, who wouldn't necessarily go into a traditional bookshop might well venture into somewhere that had the word comics in the title. That was one of the reasons. The other reason, which has proved really helpful for us, is we are a destination shop. We're in the high street, but we are a quieter end of the high street. We're not a footfall shop. We are also surrounded by a lot of towns and villages who geographically can travel to us with no trouble at all. And we wanted to stand out as being that shop that offered that. And you can do it through your merchandising. Does anybody have a comic-y element to their shop that they promote in their branding or style already? What's your shop name?
Not just books.
Not just books, okay, so that already. Some of you may already know Page 45, do you, in Nottingham?
Yeah.
It's a fabulous shop. Its focus is very much comics, manga and graphic novels. They're called Page 45, nothing to do with what they sell. I think it's to do with a philosophy or an idea that you can pick up any book and read Page 45 and it will change your life. So that was the emphasis for that shop. This is as you come into our shop. So you notice there's a pretty cranky old front door. The shop was built in 1573, so it's been there a long time. It never was a bookshop, it's been many other things. So we didn't inherit a bookshop, we had to create an audience, we had to create a style, we had to create branding and everything from the beginning. The shop is higgledy-piggledy. It's got a nice big window, the sun flies in. It's got another room just behind this one and another one behind that. They're all joined together, and the one at the back goes into a courtyard garden. So we've got a space that's quite neurodiverse and accessible and comfortable for people to come into. We don't have music, but the back room is all Games Workshop, tabletop games, role-playing games. We also do Pokemon cards and manga, so it's quite diverse really in terms of content. What I wanted to show you on this one though is face out is really important for us in our shop. And that's one of the things that we did during the lockdown is we introduced a lot more face-out stands in the shop because illustrators and artists are really key to that whole area of graphic novels, comics and manga.
And Tracy, what impact has that had on sales? Have you seen an appreciable increase?
Yeah, interestingly, our comics started on this face-out stand. And then we moved them upstairs because what we wanted to do was enable people who wanted the latest Ellie Griffiths, Richard Coles, etc. to come in and be able to browse our popular books. And so we thought we'll focus on those downstairs and we'll move the comics upstairs. What we realised was that comics are a grab item. And so, in fact, they're not as cheap as they used to be. They're anything between £3.25 and £7.99. I think that's quite expensive for a comic, personally. But so now they're back downstairs as a grab item. We're not discerning in terms of ages. We do try and protect the more adult content to the top shelf. So I'll give you an example of a book. Here's a graphic novel. I'm happy to pass it around. But not every family is keen to have this in public display. So Ruth, you can keep it off and pass it around if you like. It might suggest that we're in quite a different sort of shop. But we also mix and match, so we're not discerning about graphic novels. We mix our graphic novels with all of our picture books and other content. So the bottom half of this face-out stand should appeal to anybody and everybody. What we wanted to do was people not necessarily to think that's the graphic novel section in the shop. And so that's it. I'm going to talk about this display in a minute, but this is our till here, so you can see it's a pretty small shop. And some people have said, well, I don't know whether I've got space to do graphic novels and manga as well as everything else that I'm doing, so hopefully I'll be able to help you with that one. This may be preaching to the converted because there were so many hands that came up earlier that said, we already do graphic novels and manga. Anybody want to be brave and say what a graphic novel is? No, you want me to say? We think of a graphic novel as a standalone book. We also see that it's got panels inside it. Let me see if I can find you an example. Yeah, and this is a fairly standard one, but normally graphic novels have got panel content that throws a story. So with a graphic novel, the one I've chosen here is V for Vendetta, because I thought Halloween, why wouldn't you? V for Vendetta is a single story. It's actually written by Alan Moore, who lives in Northampton, which is the next county to us. So we are also looking at books by writers and illustrators and artists who are relevant to our shop, and that's probably well worth you having a look at doing as well. V for Vendetta has been around at least 12 years. It was one of the first books we bought for the shop. It's still one of the books we continually buy from gardeners. So we do use gardeners for our graphic novels. Another one written by the same author is Watchmen. We know that both of those became films as well, so that was another audience who came in to buy the book. It still sells every Halloween. V for Vendetta sells, and I've got another Halloweeny one here as well. See if I can find it. Yeah, this one's Halloween, but completely different audience. This is for young people. And anybody heard of this one before? It's about a paranormal investigator, and it actually has paranormal investigator in it. So, you know, graphic novels are not frightened of using long words. So I'll give you that one to pass on. So, as I say, Watchmen was important to us. It's one of the first graphic novels that my youngest son also had a chance. Do come in and grab a seat. Front row's completely empty for some reason. Thanks for coming. Sorry. That's all right, no problem. So we've talked about graphic novels. What about trade paperbacks? Any suggestions of what a trade paperback is?
The oversized paperback. You mean?
Yeah, you could say it like that. Actually, there's a very close similarity between manga and trade paperbacks. Trade paperbacks are single issue comics that if they are popular enough, they are then collated together to create a trade paperback. So a trade paperback is very often the most popular Spider-Man, Batman, Deadpool, Miss Marvel. All of those may have started out as single issue comics, and then as they become more popular, then they become a wider audience. I personally would always buy a trade paperback rather than a comic. Not only is it sorry please.
Would that be considered like an omnibus, as they call them sometimes?
There are, yeah, normally omnibuses are complete collections. Trade paperbacks aren't. So for example, volume 1 of a Spider-Man story or Miles Morales would be the first 6 issues of the comic, and then you get the second volume, which is the next 6, and so on. They do vary in price. Some of them are $7.99, others of them are sort of $18.99. So there is a big price differential between them. Gardeners often do an offer, a promotion of graphic novels and manga, so it's worth keeping an eye on that, and you can often get them 50% off from there. So that's trade paperbacks. I said there's a similarity, didn't I, between manga and trade paperbacks, in that manga starts off in a magazine, almost always, without exception, as a magazine. If it's popular again, then it gets converted into the books. Has anybody got any particular favourite titles for manga here? Please do say.
There's a charming one called Maiko-san Chi no Makanai-san, which is in English Kyo in Kyoto. It's about a young lady who fails to become a geisha, but becomes the cook for a geisha house instead. And it's so wholesome. Please, everyone read it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and please post it up and over so that other people can benefit from it. Or Booksellers Network on Facebook, that'd be brilliant. Yeah, thank you. Tokyo Ghoul, yeah, very popular. And in fact, Tokyo Ghoul is one of those, like My Hero Academia, where people say, is it suitable for year 11, for the 11-year-olds in my school? And normally 11 upwards is probably a good age point in terms of recommendations for those. Comic books, pretty much the same as trade paperbacks. Some of them are standalone, but a lot of them are multiple issue there. I've put Marvel and DC down as a separate category. It doesn't need to be. The point about Marvel and DC is people tend to lump them together under superhero titles. And I know Page 45 in Nottingham put them right at the back of the shop. They don't want their style to be branded as a superhero comic shop, but they recognise there's a need for them. It's also important to recognise that there are some fantastic publishers that are not Marvel and DC. So if you're just thinking of expanding your stock, don't do Marvel and DC. I personally call DC the bad boy heroes. Batman, Deadpool. You wouldn't believe the number of 3-year-olds we would get in wanting to buy books on Deadpool, but luckily Adam diverts them to something else. And the good guys, like Superman and Spider-Man, in my opinion, are very much Marvel characters there. But we've got Titan Books, who do the Doctor Who series in the UK. We've got Phoenix Books, Phoenix Comics, which is an amazing award-winning UK publisher. I could talk about them a lot, and in fact David Ficklin Books, who is involved in Phoenix Comics, his books outsell anything else we've got in the shop, and I'll give you a reason why. Anybody else stop Bunny versus Monkey? So many smiles, so many hands going up. This is our best-selling series in the whole bookshop, so we don't really have an adult title that outsells this. This outsells everything by far. And do you know what? It's not just for youngsters, it's all ages buy this. Why wouldn't you have this on your shelf? And why do we think that comics are for... I know time and time again we often hear people say comics, graphic novels, manga, they're not proper books. You choose yourself a proper book, whoever you are. But I would recommend this every time to anybody, and this is the new one that's out. And there's been some good on this. So, is it Indie Alliance are doing a really good discount on Bunny vs Monkey? Not only that, they are fantastic at sending signed book plates, signed posters by Jamie Smart, and all kinds of other stuff as well. Jamie Smart, if you follow him on Instagram, he says, don't call them graphic novels. Call them comics. He wants his series, and there's a whole lot of them, branded as comics. He thinks that comics are about time they came out of the background and were seen as a genre. I'll pass this one round and people can have a look at it. And then we come to manga.
Absolutely missing from that list.
Yes?
the European tradition of comics?
Fantastic. I'm so pleased that you mentioned that, because European countries have a fantastic pedigree in terms of comic shops. So I went on holiday to Barcelona quite some time ago. Round the corner was a 3-story comic shop, and it had the most amazing selection, and I thought, why can't we all do that? But we've got quite a diverse audience in our bookshop, and so you can't really supply everything. However, I have brought a few with me. Or have I? Yes. You heard of this one? I get loud, I go quiet. Let me pass those round. Ruth, you can kick off that one. We have to credit Chicken and Frog Bookshop in Brentwood for that. They had the author, or an artist, that he actually comes from quite an artistic family. He's an artist in background, and decided that anxiety and shyness, there should be a medium that enabled people to recognise themselves in a book. And Natasha and Jim had the author of that book on a book signing, and they uploaded the video and everything, and I thought, that's a great book, I'll get that for the shop. So this networking opportunity that we've got, I think, is brilliant here. This is the other one. I was lucky enough to pick this up yesterday. Isn't that fantastic? It's also a pop-up book, and I love it. And it's in the 12 weeks of Christmas with gardeners, so I can't keep promoting what you do, you guys. But, once again, have a look at that one. It may take a little bit more time to go around the room, that one. Yeah, so we're missing those, but you're right, there's some new Ukrainian ones, there's a fabulous Italian. Have you got some that you recommend?
Alex, Bardani, these are all things that I grew up with in the Netherlands. A Storm, which is drawn by Martin Lawrence, was a British comic writer, but he didn't get famous in Britain. He became famous in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
So, obviously Asterix, but also a Dutch one, which is translated as Sir Oliver, which was Martin Toonder, and he could basically be called the Terry Pratchett of Dutch literature. So
many to choose from.
like if you go to Belgium in Brussels, there is a fantastic cartoon museum, which I would recommend to anybody to go and visit. It's so inspiring.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. That's brilliant. Once again, feel free to share on the Facebook Booksellers Network of any recommendations. Just put Skills Lab graphic novels and manga, and then everybody else can benefit from that.
There's Cine Books.
Ah,
Cine
Trent.
Books, yeah, they almost exclusively translate European comics.
And you
they
can
do
get
it
them
in,
through.
Cine.
That's right.
Gardeners.
Cine Books, yeah,
Yeah.
Cine Books, and they come in that kind of European format, more like Tintin and Asterix.
Yeah.
But they translate loads of stuff.
A CINE.
Yeah, Cine Books.
I've got a story to tell about that. During the lockdown, I'm sure some of you were all in the same position of having to drop books off at customers and not let anybody in the shop. We had a card reader and a table at the door when people were allowed to come. We had a chap came, a French speaker, who had to come and fix some equipment at a company in Huntingdon. And he was from Montreal, so he'd come a long way from home. And he wanted to buy books for Christmas, Agatha Christie, some books for his, Bunny versus Monkey, that type of thing. A whole diverse range of books, English books to take back. But he also ordered some of the Trent Alder, something or another, I forget the name of it. But they're all available through Gardeners. So you don't need to go to that specialist publisher to get those. And there's about 5 in each of the series there, but they're really great, aren't they?
Yeah,
Well recommended, yes. But it took a customer from Montreal to let us know that that was available. And then, of course, we've got Manga. Anybody want to share their awareness of what manga is?
Well, something Japanese.
Japanese, yeah.
So that's one of my favorite television series, Midnight Diner.
Oh, beautiful, yeah. Yeah, so manga, as I say, originated as magazines. They then got branded into books. And there's 2 things to be aware of in manga. One is they've got great colourful covers. This is called in one of the categories called Shonen Jump. So there's an awful lot of books that are sort of fighting. Once again, they're available for 11-year-olds upwards, but do be careful. On the back, it does do the recommended reading. So there are certain manga that are purely for titillation. We don't stock them in our shop, but just be aware that there are different age categories on manga. So 2 things to be aware of. One is bright cover, but they're all black and white inside. And they read from back to front. Yeah. So the ones that we find are very popular, still Attack on Titan, One Piece, lots of nods from people on that one. Interestingly enough, some years ago, Fairy Tale flew out the door. We couldn't get enough of them. It's now stopped selling, but it's still popular in schools.
Sorry, that's just prompted me to ask how, because there seems to be such a bewildering amount of manga out there. It's difficult to know what's popular, what to stop.
Yes, I agree.
And I know they have little shelf
Be
lives
very
of popularity.
careful with recommendations that you get, especially from children.
Yeah.
Netflix show a lot of stuff, and they all want to look, and something like we were saying, so someone trying to say like Attack on Titan is quite graphic and quite.
Yeah.
It's not a children's program, but they'll have heard it from somewhere, or one of their older siblings has.
Yeah, I've got a 14-year-old who sort of.
And they come in and go,
Right,
I'd like
that's
that. So you have to be quite careful, because even though you know what age group it's for, they're thinking it's actually for a younger age group. So it's and it is difficult.
It's knowing where to.
To be fair, most of the time we read through them first, so we'll look at them, find out what we think, and then put them into a category from there.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you say that there are any manga that are suitable for a primary age, or would you say it's mostly?
It's mostly senior school.
Mm-hmm.
I would say exclusively senior school.
Yeah.
There are those that are romanticised ones, and also probably more appealing to manga princess type books like.
Well, a good example,
Zone of the Dawn.
Sailor Moon, or
Sailor Moon. That's been around forever, hasn't it? We still get people of all ages buying Pokemon books. So if you've not done it before, just get some Pokemon in, and that seems to be all ages are still interested in that. Any other questions or comments on manga? Yes, we've got quite a few.
You were saying that they are all very, very graphic on front cover issue. You also got to remember that a lot of these manga books, there's absolutely hundreds of them in the series. Which is when it becomes very, very complicated, and especially in lockdown, they weren't producing the paper form because they print them on special paper, and trying to get back copies was an absolute nightmare. So if you've got someone who's got the first 50 and they want 51 and you can't get hold of it, they get really upset.
You have to set the expectation,
But once you've got them written on the first 5, you know you've got them next for the rest of them, because you can't stop.
Well, some of them though, it's hard to go back to the start of the series because they're not available anymore.
There's a few things that are coming up in future slides. One is digitised copies. There's still people who want to buy a copy even though they've read it online. But we don't find people too fussed about getting the next one in the series. You know, if it's one they haven't got, they'll get number 97 even if they haven't got 96. Lots of nods from you. Any other comments to make at this point? Yeah, come back to you.
Sorry, it's just a comment. A manga I read when I was younger was Haikyuu, and that's like just a friendly volleyball like sport one. So if you are looking to aim manga at a younger audience, Haikyuu is a really good one because it's just competitive volleyball. But it was a really, really good plot line.
Yeah.
Haikyuu is H-A-I-K-Y. I think it's W. Yeah. But it was really good. I really enjoyed it when I was younger.
Lovely recommendation, thank you.
The Pokemon books, is that also senior school plus? Because we get a lot of younger children looking at Pokemon.
You can get younger age.
You can, actually. The same with things like Batman and Superman and everything. There are learn to read books out in hardcover for about £4 now.
Yeah.
But there's also series that fit in greeting cards holders as well. And they're for a much younger age group. So yeah, I would say Pokemon's pretty generic.
Yeah.
You had a comment?
I did, just weighing in on what everyone's saying about the age appropriateness. sometimes you have manga that have lovely tiny children with huge luminous eyes on the front, and then they get eaten in the book quite badly.
Yeah.
This is an actual manga. I was wondering if there's a resource you at all to age screen them in situations where it isn't possible to read the whole thing for every volume.
Well, we read the criteria on the back of the book. Normally, Adam will go through it. I chose something to take into a school that was a comic, and it had a really fun cartoony front to it, and Adam said it's not like that so you do have to read it. But Gardeners have got a promotion or a category on there, so I would definitely have a look at the age appropriate tags on there.
That was the issue that we ran into, because I happened to have read the manga that was recommended for 5 to 8, and I knew it was not 5 to 8. but yes, absolutely, if that's the thing. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other comments?
Did you find, like with the demise of Buffy and the YA category, that this filled the gap? Was there an overlap from that into this, or are they completely separate?
Completely separate, I would say.
Yeah.
Ironically, we still get people requesting Buffy
Yeah.
graphic novels.
Yeah.
And so some of the classics are still kind of
Going
appropriate.
strong, yeah.
You can't stock everything, can
No.
you? Interestingly enough, Batman sells really well for us. Batman, Halloween, some of the really old historical, some of the new stuff. So don't worry if it's been out 15 years. If it's one that people are requesting and it's available from publishers or wholesalers, then get it in.
Do you sell any second hand?
No, we don't, but we have a fabulous Oxfam bookshop down the other end of the high street, and they do. So I went in there this week actually to buy something for me, because we all muck in together, and they had Watchmen in there for $6.99. So there you are, that's a little treat for you.
Well, I buy them from auction houses, the specialised auction houses for comic books.
Good.
I started out as a second-hand book dealer, so, but yeah, I kind of sort of, there was so much demand for comics in my shop, I started adding more and more. And I have no real experience with the non-European traditions.
Yeah. So you've just gone along with that popularity.
Well, I got asked for a magazine. I wanted to, there's clearly a lot of demand for it. So.
Interestingly, school lists that they sent over to us never had graphic novels. The resource managers in libraries often ask us to provide recommendations for manga, but when we do pop-up shops, we always take the graphic novels with us, and they always sell.
We do a fair amount of primary school book fairs, and they're absolutely massive. And actually, I think on Twitter and stuff, there are a significant number of teachers who are using graphic novels in really interesting ways. It might also be worth talking about graphic novels, particularly at the younger end of the spectrum, as kind of gateways to reading, really good options for children who have difficulty with concentration or dyslexia.
Absolutely.
Or just want a read that isn't, hard, that isn't gonna sort of be a challenge for them. If you're going to bed and you're quite young, you want something that's kind of, comforting and easy for you, I think. But, some children, I think that they're an excellent resource for getting kids reading. We try to sort of discourage some parents in the shop who sort of go, I'm not buying you a comic. It's like, well, we see all books as useful, But yeah, it's just sort of changing that mindset. And I think that is happening in education, I think.
Yeah.
So
You're absolutely right, and that is excellent what you've just mentioned. Our audience in the shop, our customers, is incredibly neurodiverse in every way, and not just in terms of education, but also ethnicity, age. I wouldn't distinguish at all. Obviously, we've had Barrington Stokes books, haven't we, for dyslexia readers for a long time, but we don't categorise ours by age. Obviously, there's a top shelf element to life in a bookshop with graphic novels and stuff, but we integrate our graphic novels with our ordinary books. In fact, it's an adult children's section. It's all face out, it's all great illustrations, but the graphic novels are part of our learning medium, our reading medium. But you brought up some very valuable points. 12 years ago, Adam and I went to do a talk to 50 educationalists. We'd never met them before, They had a lot of students with special needs there, special needs, also learning special needs. And Adam introduced himself and talked about what his love of comics were. And he just asked, how many of you educationalists, teachers, use comics, graphic novels as a learning resource? And 2 people put their hands up. Like you, I really hope that that conversation and culture within education has changed now. Yeah, and we do get lots of teachers bringing their youngsters in for books, so that's good. Anything else before I move on to the next slide? We've got a couple more. I'll just take 2 more then. I'll go to this lady first because you haven't asked anything.
It's not asking a question, it's just back to that point. Stock graphic novels where there's a chapter book series to go along with it, and we hand sell the graphic novels to the parents and say, if you want to get your child reading again, this is the way to do it. And they're not necessarily neurodiverse, it's just, I think we find that a lot of boys will stop reading at the age of about 7 or 8, and we sell them the graphic novels to try and get them back into reading. And like there's the Alex Rider, they've got the chapter books, and then you've got the graphic novels. So we start them off on a graphic novel, and hopefully that will then lead them into reading. And Lee Bardugo's just released a graphic novel, and that's part of the Grishaverse universe. And that we've sold that 3 times to parents for their children, and they come back to buy the books.
It's lovely.
So it works really well.
Excellent. And that includes things like the fantasy element and the science fiction side, isn't it, as well? Have a final comment from yourself.
Yeah, so two sides of things. One, we use graphic novels as language books. A lot of children would rather read that, so that it's more picture than it is writing, but they can learn from it because they know the stories. But the other point was when you were saying about the YA, we actually run ours from YA into our graphic and manga section.
Right, yes, so you keep that as part of your audience, yeah.
I'll quickly revise the you mentioned penny books. I can't hear it properly. Penny books.
Oh, Cine books.
Can you spell it out?
C-I-N-E books.
Oh, right.
Yeah. If you look for Trent, that's one of the titles within the series.
So good, isn't it?
Yeah. They're about $7.99 RRP.
There's a chap on Twitter called Richard Roddick, who's a teacher, quote, spends most of his time waffling on Twitter about graphic novels and what you need in the classroom. So,
okay, good recommendation for someone to follow.
Give me some recommendation.
Yeah,
lovely, thank you.
We probably need to start wrapping up in
okay.
a minute.
Right, I'll just list these. These are all the reasons why graphic novels and manga is a good time to start stocking them in your... You said earlier about if there's 97 in the series, do I need to have them all? No, just have a selection, because if they're there, people will ask for them. And in fact, we've had our manga all over the shop, but we now have them right by the counter, right at the front of the shop. The reason is because people instantly gravitate to them, and they also provide a good source for conversations at the till, or, you know, around the till. Also, manga are very small, and they're easily pocketed, so we find that the popularity of them, it's better to have them on obvious display. A little plug for you. I'll move on. Yeah. Shelf appeal, I think this is quite an important one. Where do we stock them? Just mentioned they have them near the YA section. We try and have them face out. We also, it's up to you, isn't it, whether you go for any of these categories. Certainly graphic novels we find by publisher is a really good way to do it. So if people want to go for Image Comics or Vertigo, Marvel, DC, then they've got those in the sections, and then we'll do them by author. You mentioned Omnibus, didn't you, earlier?
Not me, but somebody did.
Oh, you didn't mention Omnibus. Yeah, there's some £41.99 for manga. Also the new Deluxe Sandman, etc. coming out. They're not always in stock from wholesalers, sadly, but they are great, and they do sell as, you know, favourite copies. So they keep those next to the manga by the... We've talked about that already, haven't we? Talked about the titillation and the age as well. Okay, so the challenges, I think we've gone through all of them actually, haven't we?
Brilliant.
These are set up in rainbow format now. We've got our early readers here, we've got our chapter books there, we've got graphic novels, we've got other graphic novels across the other side of the room, but we integrate everything together. And if somebody wants to lie down and read a manga on the carpet, they certainly can do that. I just happened to be in the shop one day when 3 lads came in looking at the manga. I just thought, if you don't get that demographic into your shop, maybe make your manga a little bit more prominent, put some Pokemon in there and see if you can get that conversation happening there. This is our selection of manga and popular heartstopper graphic novels, etc. at the top there. We don't have a big selection. We're known as a comic shop, but our collection we keep in stock is not great. But we are seen as a comic graphic novel manga provider there. And then the last thing I wanted to do is a 2-minute video. So if you've got the time and you don't mind staying to watch, then I'll put that on for you.
But before that, a call to encourage more acceptance of autism from 2 Cambridgeshire brothers inspired by their love of comic books.
10 years ago, Adam and Guy Makey opened Niche Comics bookshop in Huntingdon, hoping it would become an inclusive space of their own and indulge their passion for the comic world's rich characters and vivid detail. A decade on, and the shop is thriving, as Claire McGlasson reports.
From the margins to the mainstream. It's a realm where outsiders are the heroes. In the pages of comic books, Adam and Guy Makey discovered a place they felt they belonged.
On the autistic spectrum, and one of the first things I saw where I felt anywhere close to being included was the X-Men cartoon. I identified with a character and a thing that was like me, I guess.
Inspired by the stories, they set out to create an inclusive place of their own.
It was very much Adam saying that he wanted to open a comic shop, and us saying, you must be kidding, Adam. There's no way we're going to feed your obsession. Then this shop came up.
That was 10 years ago, and Niche Comics in Huntingdon and Cambridgeshire is thriving. Guy and Adam bringing strengths that may have been overlooked elsewhere.
Being able to work at my own pace, learn as I went along and build up the confidence rather than being rushed around and just feeling disorientated.
And as well as diversifying the business, they've created a safe space for customers.
You can get talking to anyone in the shop. If you see they're looking at something similar to you, you'll get into conversation about it.
What's good about comics?
They have more pictures and less words, which means like you don't have to read as much.
It's a lovely family-owned, well-run shop.
A conversation about their own passion or perhaps other people's prejudice.
Particularly with forms of autism, they think that someone who is neurodiverse is going to be brilliant at something, a brilliant mathematician or a brilliant musician or whatever, and they have this idea that it is almost a superpower. Does that sort of put pressure on people, do you think?
I think it does, because I personally don't, I struggle with because I don't have the almost stereotypical maths and computer skills that a lot of people assume that people on the autistic spectrum have.
You do get buried under the weight of expectations.
But not when you step inside the world they've built.
What the shop has created and what they've created for themselves is that community sense. So they have people who are here to support them, not just as a business, but also as people. And that makes me very proud.
Claire McGlasson, ITV News, Huntingdon.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Got a rush somewhere else, haven't we?
No, we're sort of done now. But just to say thank you, that was fantastic. I mean, your passion and as was echoed in the report, what I was going to say anyway, was just the sheer inclusiveness. I absolutely love that, and I think that was really powerful. And thank you for being such an interactive audience as well, and for you engaged with that. So it was fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.